Bonsoir, on va commencer donc tout de suite. Bonsoir, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Non, pas du tout. Donc aujourd'hui, aujourd'hui c'est une conférence un peu exceptionnelle du lundi, donc nous avons le grand plaisir d'accueillir Jeremy Deller ce soir. Vous avez reçu cette petite présentation que je vous ai envoyée, donc pour ceux qui ne le connaissent pas, vous ne devez pas être très nombreux dans la salle. Jeremy Deller est un artiste donc, britannique qui vit et travaille à Londres et dont de nombreux projets ont été très diffusés depuis le début, on va dire, des années 2000, la fin des années 90, donc notamment la fameuse bataille d'Orgriff qui a été refilmée avec Mike Figgis au tout début des années 2000. Également, je perds complètement mon latin. Memory Bucket, le film de 2005 qui a été consacré à une petite ville du Texas, qui est la ville de naissance de George Bush. Peut-être certains d'entre vous ont eu aussi le plaisir de voir l'exposition qui avait été curatée par Jeremy Deller avec de nombreuses collaborations au Palais de Tokyo en 2008. Donc Jeremy Deller est un artiste qui travaille beaucoup à partir de collaborations avec des auteurs, avec des réalisateurs, avec des musiciens. Et aujourd'hui, il nous présente son travail, une sorte de vision un petit peu large et historique de son travail, qui va précéder la projection inédite en France à la salle de bain à 20h de son film Our Hobbies Dépêche Mode, qui est un film consacré aux fans de Dépêche Mode. Voilà. Donc je le remercie très chaleureusement d'être là ce soir et puis je lui laisse la parole. Et si vous avez des questions tout à l'heure, vous pourrez les poser. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Is that it? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I arrived today at the station and I'd forgotten I was doing this talk for some reason. I just thought I was showing the film tonight. I thought I was showing it here. But anyway, we managed to get some images off the internet. And I've got some footage as well, so I think we'll be all right. But what I thought I'd do was, I've got a big show on in London at the moment, and I thought I'd take you on a tour of the show through some of the installation shots, but I've also refer to the work in greater detail, not just through installation shots, and maybe try and explain how it is that someone that didn't go to art college, didn't do art as a young person, wasn't encouraged to make art, ends up doing a big art exhibition, basically. And how did that come to happen, really? What position? How did I manage to do that? So this is the exterior of the gallery. I have this show on at the Hayward Gallery at the moment in London. I don't know if you know it. It's a big brutalist building in the centre of London. And a lot of my work is to do with relationships with people, either groups of people or individuals. And one person I've worked with is a guy called Ed Hall, who makes banners for trade unions and also for pressure groups and demonstrations and so on. And I've been working with him for about 12, 13 years now. So he made me this banner to go on the outside of this modernist building that just says art exhibition, obviously, with the hand pointing. What I wanted to do was I wanted to make a banner or a sign that looked like a sign you'd see outside a church when you're driving through the countryside and you see there's an art exhibition on in the church, you know? And you go in and it's full of terrible watercolour paintings of people's... well, in Britain, it's full of watercolour paintings of people's holiday homes in France. So it's full of pictures of France, weirdly. But usually it's just full of quite bad paintings, really. But I often like the sign more than the art. So here I'm imitating this idea of an art exhibition. So it's, in a way, it's meant to look quite homemade, because a lot of what is in the exhibition is quite homemade. So in a sense, I'm setting the tone before you go into the gallery even. And the first thing you see, the Hayward is a very big gallery. The first room is huge. It's, I don't know how many meters square, but it's very high. But you walk into the first room and you enter into a suburban bedroom. This is a recreation of my bedroom when between the age of about 18 and 31. I lived with my parents till I was 31, lived at home. I was unemployed, I had small jobs here and there. And I made a lot of work in the bedroom. And I did a lot of thinking and reading and listening to music in the bedroom. And then in 1993, my parents went on holiday for 2 weeks. And I took over the house and did an exhibition in their absence. So I took over every part of the house. I took over the bathrooms, the toilet, the living room and so on, and also my bedroom. So in a way, this room at the Hayward, when you walk into this small space, is a recreation of that exhibition. And so the paintings you see, these are paintings based on the life of Keith Moon, the drummer with The Who. This phrase, you treat this place like a hotel. I don't know if you know this phrase. I don't know if there's an equivalent in France, but it's usually what parents tell their children when they never see them and they come in and eat and then they go out and come back late drunk or whatever. And so I was really making an exhibition about living with my parents and how to live with your parents, even though you're far too old. You're in your late 20s at that time. This is another part of that room. My bedroom was not as big as this. It was much smaller, but we made it bigger for the exhibition. So it's not meant to be, Caroline was asking me earlier, it's not meant to be like a Christophe Buckel installation where everything is absolutely perfect and it's a piece, perfection in terms of the production. I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in showing the work and getting people to have an idea of what that room is like. So you can look at the drawers and you see on the right you have this wardrobe. You can open up the doors and you can explore within. There's art in all the drawers and the wardrobes. So there's a sense of discovery. Also, for very practical reasons, if you make a very small room as your first room in an exhibition, it means you have to limit the numbers going into the room. So it would actually make it very busy far too quickly. So a bigger room means more people can see it. So I was concerned about that. So really this is a way of containing a lot of work between the age of 20 and 30, let's say something like this. Or, about 20 and 30, or 19 and 20, and 19 and 30. And really, it's work that maybe I wouldn't be able to show in a traditional gallery setting. So I thought I had to have it in a domestic setting because of the nature of the work. It wouldn't look so great in a big room, so I had to be in a small room. And also, it's me trying to work out what I was trying to do as an artist, how I was going to work as an artist. So it's really unformed. So maybe you could say it's the equivalent of work you might make in your first year at art college, or even before that, when you're really trying to work out who you are and what it is you're trying to do. And in another sense, a lot of early work, I think, is like an exorcism almost of your adolescence or childhood. And this work is certainly that. It's a lot of obsessions from my childhood or my teenage years about music or about culture or women or whatever. So it's good in a way to contain it in a small space, because if it was in a big space, it would just it wouldn't look so strong. Really, it needs to be in a contained small space. So I started making work. This really changed my life in terms of what it is. And this is just this is a drawing made very, very large. But until 1997, I was making work like you saw in that other image. I was making posters, I was doing small interventions, photographs and so on. And then in 1996, I had the idea to do a concert, or to get brass bands to play with acid house music. Now, brass bands in Britain are a very specific thing. They're music associated with industrial culture. They're associated with the north of England. A lot of people think they're a bit stupid or funny. That's often to do with like the class system in Britain. So, because they're a very working class form of music making. And I actually thought that you could take the brass band and they could play this kind of music, which is acid house music, which is obviously electronic music, a post-industrial music from America, but was a
Bien, bonsoir. On va commencer donc tout de suite. Bonsoir, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Non, pas du tout. Donc aujourd'hui, aujourd'hui c'est une conférence un peu exceptionnelle du lundi. Donc nous avons le grand plaisir d'accueillir Jeremy Deller ce soir. Vous avez reçu cette petite présentation que je vous ai envoyée. Donc pour ceux qui ne le connaissent pas, vous ne devez pas être très nombreux dans la salle. Jeremy Deller est un artiste donc britannique qui vit et travaille à Londres, et dont de nombreux projets ont été très diffusés depuis le début, on va dire, des années 2000, la fin des années 90, donc notamment la fameuse bataille d'Orgrive qui a été refilmée avec Mike Figgis au tout début des années 2000. Également, je perds complètement mon latin, Memory Bucket, le film de 2005 qui a été consacré à une petite ville du Texas, qui est la ville de naissance de George Bush. Peut-être certains d'entre vous ont eu aussi le plaisir de voir l'exposition qui avait été curatée par Jeremy Deller avec de nombreuses collaborations au Palais de Tokyo en 2008. Donc Jeremy Deller est un artiste qui travaille beaucoup à partir de collaborations avec des auteurs, avec des réalisateurs, avec des musiciens. Et aujourd'hui, il nous présente son travail, une sorte de vision un petit peu large et historique de son travail, qui va précéder la projection inédite en France à la salle de bain à 20h de son film Our Hobbies Dépêche Mode, qui est un film consacré aux fans de Dépêche Mode. Voilà. Donc je le remercie très chaleureusement d'être là ce soir, et puis je lui laisse la parole. Et si vous avez des questions tout à l'heure, eh bien, vous pourrez les poser. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Is that it? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I arrived today at the station, and I'd forgotten I was doing this talk for some reason. I just thought I was showing the film tonight. I thought I was showing it here. But anyway, we managed to get some images off the internet, and I've got some footage as well, so I think we'll be all right. But what I thought I'd do was, I've got a big show on in London at the moment, and I thought I'd take you on a tour of the show through some of the installation shots, but I've also referred to the work in greater detail, not just through installation shots. And maybe try and explain how it is that someone that didn't go to art college, didn't do art as a young person, wasn't encouraged to make art, ends up doing a big art exhibition basically. And how did that come to happen really? What position? How did I manage to do that? So this is the exterior of the gallery. I have this show on at the Hayward Gallery at the moment in London. I don't know if you know it. It's a big brutalist building in the centre of London. And a lot of my work is to do with relationships with people, either groups of people or individuals. And one person I've worked with is a guy called Ed Hall, who makes banners for trade unions and also for pressure groups and demonstrations and so on. And I've been working with him for about 12, 13 years now. So he made me this banner to go on the outside of this modernist building that just says art exhibition, obviously, with the hand pointing. What I wanted to do was, I wanted to make a banner or a sign that looked like a sign you'd see outside a church when you're driving through the countryside and you see there's an art exhibition on in the church, you know? And you go in and it's full of terrible watercolour paintings of people's... well, in Britain, it's full of watercolour paintings of people's holiday homes in France. So it's full of pictures of France, weirdly. But usually it's just full of quite bad paintings, really. But I often like the sign more than the art. So here I'm imitating this idea of an art exhibition. So it's, in a way, it's meant to look quite homemade, because a lot of what is in the exhibition is quite homemade. So in a sense, I'm setting the tone before you go into the gallery even. And the first thing you see, the Hayward is a very big gallery. The first room is huge. It's, I don't know how many meters square, but it's very high. But you walk into the first room and you enter into a suburban bedroom. This is a recreation of my bedroom when between the age of about 18 and 31. I lived with my parents till I was 31, lived at home. I was unemployed, I had small jobs here and there. And I made a lot of work in the bedroom, and I did a lot of thinking and reading and listening to music in the bedroom. And then in 1993, my parents went on holiday for 2 weeks, and I took over the house and did an exhibition in their absence. So I took over every part of the house. I took over the bathrooms, the toilet, the living room and so on, and also my bedroom. So in a way, this room at the Hayward, when you walk into this small space, is a recreation of that exhibition. And so the paintings you see, these are paintings based on the life of Keith Moon, the drummer with The Who. This phrase, you treat this place like a hotel. I don't know if you know this phrase. I don't know if there's an equivalent in France, but it's usually what parents tell their children when they never see them and they come in and eat and then they go out and come back late drunk or whatever. And so I was really making an exhibition about living with my parents and how to live with your parents, even though you're far too old. You're in your late 20s at that time. This is another part of that room. My bedroom was not as big as this. It was much smaller, but we made it bigger for the exhibition. So it's not meant to be, Caroline was asking me earlier, it's not meant to be like a Christophe Buckel installation where everything is absolutely perfect and it's a piece, perfection in terms of the production. I'm not interested in that. I'm more interested in showing the work and getting people to have an idea of what that room is like. So you can look at the drawers and you see on the right you have this wardrobe. You can open up the doors and you can explore within. There's art in all the drawers and the wardrobes. So there's a sense of discovery. Also, for very practical reasons, if you make a very small room as your first room in an exhibition, it means you have to limit the numbers going into the room. So it would actually make it very busy far too quickly. So a bigger room means more people can see it. So I was concerned about that. So really this is a way of containing a lot of work between the age of 20 and 30, let's say something like this. Or, about 20 and 30, or 19 and 20, 19 and 30. And really, it's work that maybe I wouldn't be able to show in a traditional gallery setting. So I thought I had to have it in a domestic setting because of the nature of the work. It wouldn't look so great in a big room, so I had to be in a small room. And also, it's me trying to work out what I was trying to do as an artist, how I was going to work as an artist. So it's really unformed. So maybe you could say it's the equivalent of work you might make in your first year at art college, or even before that, when you're really trying to work out who you are and what it is you're trying to do. And in another sense, a lot of early work, I think, is like an exorcism almost of your adolescence or childhood. And this work is certainly that. It's a lot of obsessions from my childhood or my teenage years about music or about culture or women or whatever. So it's good in a way to contain it in a small space, because if it was in a big space, it would just it wouldn't look so strong. Really, it needs to be in a contained small space. So I started making work. This really changed my life in terms of what it is. And this is just this is a drawing made very, very large. But until 1997, I was making work like you saw in that other image. I was making posters, I was doing small interventions, photographs and so on. And then in 1996, I had the idea to do a concert, or to get brass bands to play with acid house music. Now, brass bands in Britain are a very specific thing. They're music associated with industrial culture. They're associated with the north of England. A lot of people think they're a bit stupid or funny. That's often to do with like the class system in Britain. So, because they're a very working class form of music making. And I actually thought that you could take the brass band and they could play this kind of music, which is acid house music, which is obviously electronic music, a post-industrial music from America, but was adopted very much in Britain, especially in the north of England. I'm sure you know the story about this and about the drug problems that came with acid house, the free parties and the hysteria with the media. And so brass bands and acid house, even though they might not have much in common, they actually have a lot in common in terms of the way they were treated by the media in the 80s and 90s. Because the brass band movement was part of the union movement in Britain. It's very closely associated with industry and hence unions. And so after the miners' strike, brass bands were used very heavily in helping the miners return to work. The brass bands were at the front as the miners walked back into the mines that they'd been on strike from. So you get this moment in the middle where it's civil unrest, where the hysteria around the acid house scene and the free parties and ecstasy meets with the hysteria around the industrialization of Britain and the trade union movement. So they both have something in common in terms of their anti-establishment feeling towards them in terms of music. And the fact that they were both seen as part of dangerous movements. One, the trade union movement, and the other one was the acid house movement and the free parties in the UK. So this is really how not only is this how I justify the project, and how the project is not just a kind of comedy project, but also it's how I justify how I work and how I make connections in my work. So in a way, it's a very good way of showing how I think about things and how I make connections. This piece is called The History of the World, which of course is a very pretentious title in a way. And I called it that because for some people this was their world, the world of dance music or the world of trade unions, or being a miner, or being someone that made electronic music. But it's the history of some people's worlds. And also, just in a way to draw attention to the importance of these two scenes. So this is how I think. Like I said, it's not necessarily true, as is nothing I'm going to tell you is necessarily true, but it's something that it's true for me and maybe some other people in the world, maybe none, but it's true for one person at least. So that's why I called it that. I'm actually going to show some footage now, because some footage of the band. So we did this concert, and the reason it's such an important work for me is because it's when I went from making objects to making events, really. When I rang up the guy who ran the brass band and said, would you play this music? I didn't say acid house music, I just said electronic music. He said, yes, we'll try and see how it goes. And I immediately realized that people, the public, people not in the art world were actually more receptive to making art sometimes than people within the art world. And they were quite happy to give something a chance or take a small risk. So we did a concert and it went very well. And this is a little bit of footage from TV of when Tate Modern opened, the brass band was asked to perform. And this is just the end of a TV show that was live from Tate Modern on the opening night. And it's the band performing a song called What Time Is Love, which I'm sure some of you must know. It's by the KLF. It's a great song.
And now to play us out, the Williams Ferry Band with What Time Is Love. Goodbye for now from Tate Modern.
weirdly enough, I hadn't seen that footage until today. I'd never gone online to see it. So that's quite strange for me to watch that. So like I said, this really liberated me from having to be an artist in the traditional sense, which was good because my skills are not really in technical things. I'm not a technical person. I'm not a perfectionist. And I'm much better organizing things and discussing things with people. That's where my strengths lie, I think. But what that means is, for an exhibition, is that if you're doing projects that exist outside galleries, or almost always exist outside galleries, when you do an exhibition in a museum, you have to work out a way to show those projects inside a gallery. And so what I decided quite early was for the exhibition had to have a drama to it, and have almost be like a spectacle, or have some sort of theatrical quality to it. So this is a room within the show that has I wonder if this person is still alive. And he is still alive. Whoops. That's him now. He's 72, and he still wrestles, and he lives in Florida. He would never come back to Britain, I don't think, because it's changed too much for him. And in his mind, he is the most superb athlete in the world. He's the greatest wrestler in the world, the greatest living human being in the world. He's absolute most egocentric person you could ever meet. You cannot have a conversation with him about anything that is not more than 5 centimeters from his nose, effectively, in the sense that it's everything you talk about with him has to be about him and about his life. Anything you talk about, he will get to be on the subject of him within seconds. So he's so driven that it's not surprising that he did that photograph before that I showed you. It's absolutely within why he's like that. So that makes him a kind of a difficult person. But I made a film about him. And this is the film. This is at the Hayward. What I felt was that I find it always a problem when you go to an exhibition and it's just full of black rooms you've got to walk into and sort of watch a film and sit down, and they're very hot and smelly. And my exhibition has 3 of these black rooms, 4 actually, but I easily could have had 10. So I wanted to show the film of Adrian not in a black room, but I felt that it had to be shown in a very dramatic way as a film. It had to be presented in a way that was befitted Adrian and his life, because really a small TV like that cannot contain the amazingness and the incredible qualities that he has as a human being. So I got Stuart, the guy who did the crash helmet and the face, I asked him if he would make a painting about Adrian's life. This fantasy painting that relates to Adrian's life. So you go on the left, you go from the coal mines through the solar system to this paradise, because Adrian now lives in Florida. He lives by the sea. And in the middle there's Adrian holding up himself, like Hercules holding up the world. And when this was painted, and I looked at it, I thought, I can understand why I've done this now, because I couldn't study art, I did the next best thing. I studied art history. So I studied the Baroque. I studied 17th century painting and sculpture. And the Baroque was a very interesting time in art history, because it was a moment when the Catholic Church was really with the Counter-Reformation, was trying to regain an upper hand against the Protestant Church, was trying to re-attract the faithful, to keep them engaged. And so the art of the Baroque is not about perfection in the way it is in the Renaissance. It's about an engagement with an audience, and drama, and humanity, and mixing genres. And I suppose that's where I think it became very influential in the way I work, weirdly. Just thinking about how I staged the exhibition, but also the way I work with people. So this, in a way, is a kind of a 21st century Baroque artwork. It's a painting, and it's the sculpture of a TV, and it's video, in a very traditional sense, really. But that's how Adrian looks. And the film is kind of unbelievable in some ways about the way he lives. The last shot of the film is him on on a walking machine. You know, these ones where you run and you don't go anywhere. You're just running on a treadmill. And he has a huge TV, one of these really old TVs. It's huge. And he puts on a slideshow of his life and just looks at himself and walks and runs towards it. And he plays the song Mr. Vain. Do you know this song? It's like a house song about being vain and beautiful, and he just does that. And it's like a piece of performance art, basically. But his whole life has been a performance, effectively. And he is an artwork. And so I suppose that's why I was attracted to him. As a personality, he might not be that attractive, but in terms of what he's done with his life, he's incredibly attractive. This is, again, another banner by Ed. But this is an event I did in Manchester where I wanted to show the town to itself as an event. Usually with a procession it's about fantasy, or it's about a version of a town. It's like a portrait. I wanted to do this with Manchester. So I asked all different kinds of people to be in the procession. Some traditional people, but then very untraditional people. For example, people who are homeless and people who you might think might be antisocial. So there's like an antisocial element to the procession. This is one thing we did. This was called the last of the Industrial Revolution. And these were the last people to work in the mills in Manchester, which is what Manchester is famous for. So we made this basically a mill on a van, on a truck, and fixed it to a truck, and it just went down the street. Part of the procession was this cafe, which we copied from a market. And this is the cafe in the Hayward Gallery. Now what I wanted in the exhibition was to have a moment where you could get a free drink in the exhibition. And so they have tea there, English tea. So you go there and you get a free cup of tea. And around it are all the banners that we used in the procession. So if you look at the top left, it's called the Unrepentant Smokers. And basically it was the most controversial part of the procession. It was a group of people smoking, walking down the street. And it nearly meant that we couldn't do the procession itself because a local politician wanted the procession banned because of this element of someone smoking. But really what I wanted with the cafe was just to have a piece of, like a slice of reality in the procession, but also then in the exhibition. Because really this is the middle point of the show, and after this the show gets, I suppose you would call it quite heavy in terms of the themes within it. So it's like it lulls you in a false sense of security before you go and see two rooms, two installations that are not very happy installations, in the way that this is a happy space. You're just about to go to an unhappy space. This is the space. This is the project that you go to from the cafe. This is probably the thing I'm known for more than anything else in terms of my career, I imagine. It's the reenactment of a battle from the miners' strike in Britain. This is the reenactment as it was happening. So what I wanted to do was, at the age of 17, I'd seen on TV this confrontation between the police and striking miners in a field that had then gone from the field through a village, and it looked like a medieval battle. And I couldn't quite believe the violence of it. And it was on the news in the evening, and really became one of the most central points of the strike for a number of reasons. So what I wanted to do was to return to this place and reenact it with people from reenactment societies, but also local people, former miners who are actually there on the day. Now I'll just talk to you a little bit about reenactment societies. Do you have these in France? You're not all French though, are you? So it doesn't really matter. But this is a big scene in England. People dressing up. British people love their history. They love heritage and history, and it's always on TV. It's always referred to. The Second World War is still officially going on in Britain. If you watch TV, you'd think it was still happening. There's always something about World War II on television. Because it's the last thing we did properly or well, So these are reenactment societies, And they're very, very popular in Britain. So any weekend, thousands of people will dress up and they will fight as from all over British history, all points of British history, from Roman times to Second World War. Also, Civil War is a very, very popular period to fight or to join and dress up as a Civil War members of a Civil War society. Even the American Civil War, people will reenact. I think this is the Napoleonic Wars. I think this might even be against the French, but I don't know my military history. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to show that one. But, so what I wanted was the guys that do that every weekend, who dress up as a Roman centurion or a medieval battle, man with a big sword or whatever, to dress up as a policeman or a miner and take part in a contemporary reenactment of an event that is in living memory. This is the real thing, by the way. This is not the reenactment. And as you can see, there are a lot of police when it originally happened. And it was a major turning point within the strike. So I wanted him to do that because they often talk about history and living history. But I realized that actually when they talk about history, they just mean guns and uniforms often. And how many horses were present, how many people were killed. Maybe about the tactics, but it's really about the equipment of war, the technicality of war. And I was interested in them taking part in a very political reenactment in the place where it had happened with former veterans of a war, effectively, because the miners' strike for a lot of people was the equivalent of a war that was going on in Britain for 1 year. It was virtually a civil war, but without guns. People were killed. A lot of people were killed in a variety of ways. So in a way it was for them to think about what they do every weekend when they dress up, but also for them to have an experience of meeting someone from a veteran from a campaign, because there's no way you can meet someone from 500 years ago unless you're totally crazy and you think you've met them or you have some connection with them. So there's no emotion in most of these reenactments you see from the past. They're just like play acting, effectively. And also the people that do reenactments are often very conservative people. They're former policemen or former soldiers. And so they enjoy the guns, they enjoy the orders and the uniforms and so on. So I wanted those people who are actually quite conservative to meet the miners and former miners who have a very different view of the world and see what they made of each other. As it was, the reenactors were terrified of the miners. They actually thought the miners were going to start a new revolution with this reenactment. So we had a lot of problems when we had a rehearsal. But in the end, it worked out fine. And I think what I wanted to do was, people say sometimes when you make an artwork, oh, you're trying to heal wounds, or you're trying to bring communities together. With this work especially, and a lot of others, I was actually trying to make people more angry. I was actually trying to, in a way, it was like a post-mortem on a corpse. I was trying to give it a proper post-mortem. Or another way of looking at it is that when a crime has been committed in Britain, for example, a child has been abducted or there's been a terrible murder, the police will reenact the crime for the public so that it jogs their memories. So I was doing that, but on a scale with 1,000 people. So I was basically reenacting a crime scene from British history. Of course, I didn't tell the reenactors this because they would have not done it. If they'd have known what I wanted to do, they would have been very unhappy about it, or some of them would have been. So in a way, I had to keep it close to me. I told the miners this. I told them everything. But people assume I'm just interested in the miners here, but actually I'm actually just as interested in the reenactors and their view of British history and how we view our own histories. So after you go to that room and you see that film and all the research about it, you go into a room where there's a car that was destroyed in Baghdad in a bomb attack. This was originally going to be in London on the 4th plinth. Do you know about this thing? They have a plinth in London where contemporary art goes, and all sorts of artists have had art put up on it. And I was shortlisted with this car, and it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. So instead, I always wanted to make a museum or an exhibition, if not a museum, about the war in Iraq in about 2005, when it was still happening. So it was going to be a museum of the present, which would have objects from both sides in things that people could look at, deactivated mines, all these kinds of stuff that I personally would like to see. When you think about that conflict, especially, you can read every book and watch every documentary, but meeting someone from Iraq or meeting a soldier or seeing the objects would have made it much more clear, really, as to what was happening. So I had this car. I got it from someone who'd used it before, actually, a curator who'd used it in some anti-war exhibitions. And he offered me the car because we were trying to get one from Baghdad, and it was proving very difficult. And luckily, he said, "Just take this car I have." And we had and it was shown in some museums in New York, in America. And you see those chairs on the left. That was a place where every day there would be some expert on Iraq would be to talk to the public about the car. There'd be photographs and diagrams and so on, which was fine, but it was in an art gallery, which is always a problem when you have anything that's ugly like this. People will try and say how beautiful it is and try and aestheticize it or make out that it's an artwork and compare it to a John Chamberlain or this artist or that artist. So it's tricky. Now it has a home in the Imperial War Museum in London, which is kind of amazing because it, as you'll see, it has a history after the museum, but I offered it to the Imperial War Museum, and now it's shown amongst tanks and rockets in the main atrium of the War Museum, which for me is like the best place it could go to. What I did was, though, I was more interested in was taking the car across America and showing the car to the American public, which I did in 2009 with an Iraqi citizen and an American soldier, a former PSYOPs officer. And so we traveled across America for 3.5 weeks and just turned up in places, mostly unannounced, with the car. It was always on view. And we just waited for people to walk by. We talked to them about the car. We had a flyer we'd give them. And we'd present it in a very neutral, if not boring way. Bland, I would call it. We didn't go in as an anti-war thing, and certainly didn't go in as a pro-war thing. And weirdly enough, the question I always get about this project was, well, did you get attacked by anyone? Were people angry with you? But actually the people that were most angry were anti-war people who we met, because they expected us to be super anti-war in what we were doing. And because we didn't take what they could see as a position, they thought we'd let the side down, really. But we weren't interested in that. I was much more interested in opening up a conversation rather than closing down conversations, and so to make it less oppositional. So we went on this trip, and we made little films on our way, and I'm just going to show you one. We made a whole series. This is in Memphis, and it's one of my favorite clips. I hope you can follow it. It's basically a guy talking about the car, but also relating it to the culture of where he's from, Memphis, and the problems within Memphis. And then he talks about his daughter and the problems his daughter has had, and I'll tell you what they are afterwards. But for me, it was like the most one of the best conversations we had. We had a lot of, what you find is if you go to around America, as we did with this, a lot of art students, people like yourselves, had been to Iraq and had fought in the war in Iraq because they get through college through enlisting in the military. They have their fees paid. So you get all these young, sensitive people who ended up being on submarines, putting missiles into Tomahawk missiles into silos and so on. And so they were all totally traumatized, as were a lot of people we saw, but often for different reasons. But this is Ron, just talking about the car, his daughter, and Memphis as a place.
Anytime the country goes through hard times, the Great Depression, World War II, or anything else, it's the culture that brings people together. It's all about history. Stax Music, Isaac Hayes, Otis Redding, Booker T and the MGs, Sun Records, all of it. It all started here. You know, all of it started here. You know, Memphis gets a bad rap, you know, but people in Memphis work harder to get along because of the adversity that they've been through. And that if people in other places could see how hard people in Memphis work to get along and to right the wrongs of the past, it wouldn't have such a bad reputation. I love Memphis. Memphis is a great place. And when I moved down here last year, I decided that's the last time I'm moving. I'm never going back to Nashville. I'm staying right here in Memphis. And, you know, this is it, because I'm old now. I'm getting close to retirement.
Did you feel isolated when you were, because of your political views early on?
God, yes. My daughter that I told y'all about, that chewed the cop out, at the time that happened, she was ill. And a few months later, she died.
I'm sorry.
And the same lady that called the cops on her, I was standing outside the day before the funeral, and we were planning some funeral arrangements. And this lady had the nerve to walk up to me and tell me that the reason that my daughter died was that God was punishing us for not supporting George W. Bush. And I mean, that did something to me. I mean, it just kind of turned me against any type of religion. And, you know, as far as this be bipartisan and forgive and forget, no. You can't forgive and forget. Like that car over there that got blown all to pieces, you know, the people that live over there, how many of their loved ones died in that blast? Should they forgive and forget? You know, they didn't come over here and start a war on us. We came over there and started a war on them. Why shouldn't they hate us forever? If someone did that to my neighborhood, I guarantee you I'd hate them forever. But Americans have a sense of entitlement, that everything's owed to us. Why? You know, why should we have everything?
So we had 3.5 weeks of conversations like that with people, but also a lot of Christian fundamentalists would come and would talk to us. And what they couldn't believe was the Iraqi guy we had with us, Isam, knew as much about the Bible as they did, but also knew about the Quran, he knew about other religions. He was incredibly well educated. He was basically self-educated because he was not part of the Ba'ath Party, and so he had to educate himself during Saddam's time. So it's an incredible project to do, and I think a lot of the projects I do really couldn't happen outside the art world in a way. I think the art world is a very good place for people like myself, and I'm sure like a lot of you, where you can operate and do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise anywhere else. And whether it's art or not, I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me if people don't think it's art, because it's happened. It's almost too late. So I'm very glad I made a life being an artist, basically, because it was never really looked like that. But I think a lot of the things I do are really just open-ended in terms of they're like a question. The question being, what if you took a car destroyed in Baghdad in a car bomb attack around America? What would happen? Well, now I actually know the answer to that, and that's something I've always wanted to, well, not always, but I was always interested in knowing about. Once I had the idea, I thought, it's really what would happen if, and what would happen if you've got a brass band played acid house music, what would happen if, etc., etc. So in a way, a lot of my work is really about me asking a question of myself and then doing it. And even though they're big public projects, they're actually very private things in a way, because it's just about me trying to research something and then finding out what the answer is. So it's quite odd, because you don't get that emotional when you see the work, despite being so personal in a way. You just take it on board, and I do. I just take it as a sort of another thing that I've done, and you try and think of the next thing to do. But having said that, I'm here for another reason. I don't know if you know, even though I'm talking to you now, as is very clear. I am also showing a film tonight at the Salle de Bain. Did I pronounce that all right? Salle de Bain. And it's a film I made in 2006 with my friend Nick about Depeche Mode, about the fan base around the world, not really in Britain. And I think I was interested in this because I'm interested in the way that culture works, about the accidents of culture. like the way that, for example, Kraftwerk had become this huge band with people who were in hip-hop and breakdancers and so on. And this is a band who also had a big accident in that they were around and making records during the fall of the Berlin Wall and just before, in communism, at the height of communism. And so this film is really about the effect that the band had, this band from this small British town had on Eastern Europe and on the youth of Eastern Europe. There is other parts to the film, but it's really about their cultural effect on these young people. I'm going to get rid of this, if I can. I'm going to escape. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a piece of footage of the band. For some reason I can't see the... oh, there we go. In your room. Can anyone get the... just give me a hand getting the... for some reason I can't get the picture up. Where would that be? Yeah, close everything. It's worth waiting for, I promise you. Basically, what I'm going to show you is the once a year, on the 5th of May, the lead singer of Depeche Mode, he has his birthday, he shares it with this big festival, with this big celebration. But all the Depeche fans meet in one place in Moscow. And this is footage from 1991, 92 I think maybe, of thousands of young Muscovites meeting and celebrating the band all together. So it's lecture DVD, isn't it? Oh, we had it playing just now.
Yeah, it should be so complicated. Okay, I'm just start it.
Yeah. No, it's not doing it. Can you open both?
Non, faut passer par DLC.
Ouais, c'est ce que j'essaie d'ouvrir, mais il marche pas.
Il marche pas DLC?
Okay. Let's do something else. All right. You know what? I'm going to show you something else. Do you want to play it? Yeah, but you've got to go forward. You've got to find it. Don't worry. Let me do this.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to show you something else because I can't be bothered to try and do this. This is something I show at the end of talks. It's a piece of footage. In 1984, someone went around a club in the UK, a goth club in the UK, and just did this real-time view of a nightclub, which is very unusual to do that. And in a way, it's a great service for cultural history. And this was at the height of the miners' strike, so this has been like a really terrible moment in British history. But what it's interesting to show is that even though there's this terrible thing going on politically, people are still obviously going out, they had social lives and so on. But this is the last song of the night, and we'll just do a little introduction to it. There's like 20 seconds of the second to last song, and then there's the last song. And it's just one of the most amazing, sort of wonderful pieces of footage of people just lost in music. And I've just... I only discovered it like a month ago, but I just play it every talk I give. It's the last thing I ever show because I just think it's the most incredible thing to see.
I hope you've enjoyed yourselves on a rather different Sunday night. Make sure you get home safely. I'll see you next Friday. Thank you. It's a god of the small affair to the girl with the Nazi hair, but her mummy is yelling no, and her daddy is told her to go, but her friend is nowhere to be seen. Now she walks through the sunken dream to the seats with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen. But the film is a sad thing for, for she's lived it 10 times or more. She could straighten the eyes of fools as they ask her to go to some same good fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, those came and go. It's a thinking show. Take a listen to the love man, beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know. It's a destiny show. There's a life on It's all America's time to growl. Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow. Now the workers are struck for fame. Lennon's on sale again. See the mice in a million homes, from Ibiza to the Norfolk roads. Could exactly resound to bounds to my mother, my dog and clowns. But the film is a sad thing for, 'cause I looked it 10 times or more. It's about to be written again, as I ask her to move the someday. A girl's happy in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those came and go. It's a pinky show. Take a look at the love man, beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know. It's a best-selling show. It's a life on That's it, thank you, good night.
I don't think we're going to show that other thing, are we? So if we want to do questions, can you show it? Wow. It's actually very similar to that in a way, but is it in there? Okay. Why don't we show it at the end? Do some questions, then I can show it. Yeah, yeah. I thought someone was going to ask me how I made money. I thought that was the first question. Do you want to ask me that?
Good night.
Good morning.
Yes, the question was, how do you earn money?
I knew
How do
that.
you...
I was told this was coming. I earn money in different ways. So like now I'm earning money, but it doesn't really make sense, the kind of money you earn when you do this. It's not really, it's virtually kind of charity, but it's not really, it's for 2 days. But there's like this, then the commissions, and then sales sometimes. But I didn't get money for doing that big show, the museum show. There's no money involved in that for me, which is a pity. But they've just reprinted the catalogue, so I'm going to get money for that. So it's a whole variety of things. But sales is probably about 20% or a quarter, maybe, or maybe a bit more.
And do you share your budget with when you talk about collaboration?
Yeah.
Does it involve that you pay people you're working with, or do you work with people?
Well, it depends on its case by case. But if you sell an item that someone has worked on, like an object, then yes, you pay them. People mainly get paid. For example, the Orgreave, the reenactment, everyone who took part got paid in that for 2 days' work. But it really depends. But on the whole, people get paid, yeah. Anyone else? Okay. There's a question there. Okay.
Do you know the people, like the wrestler and I can't even think who else? How do you find the people for your shows?
How do I find the people? Well,
like the American guy and the wrestler that moved to Florida and things.
Well, I found him in a way because of that photograph of him with his father. I saw that photograph and I knew about it for years, and I thought I need to find who this person is and what's going on. Something's happening behind me, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so. We need to go in, yeah, but just pause it and we'll find this piece of footage. But it's you don't have to find that many people to make an art career. Every person is a year's work, but it's just you hear about them or you meet them. Or with that, I just saw that photograph about 10 years ago, and it intrigued me. So I just...
how did you find his name or anything though, or how did you go on searching for him?
Well, there's this fantastic, the internet, really. That's how I got hold of Adrian Street. 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to get hold of him, or 10 years ago even. But he makes wrestling costumes, and he has a website. He made all the wrestling costumes for Mickey Rourke in the film The Wrestler. So he has this cottage industry, so he's easy to get hold of. But it's weird that no one else has made a film about him, really, because you'd think he'd be like a perfect example. But if you could, there are films to be made about him. My one is very flattering of him. You could make a film that was very unflattering, which would be more normal to make a film about him and him being just this egomaniac. But actually I quite like that about him. But most people, you can make a very critical film about him. There's a question at the back. It's the same. It's the money person. Can I ask a question?
I wanted to know, how do you feel about showing in cases the work of other people or other people document, and how do you consider the change you operate on the look upon things you are presenting while they are...
Yeah, I know, I understand. Well, they're always credited, so you always know who made the work. If someone's making a work with me, for example, the banner or the painting, that's credited to that person. So it's not as though I've made out that I made things, because I don't. But I have. Everyone has. It's not as though it's anonymous. Was that the question? But with the folk archive,
maybe the question was wider, or
yeah,
it wasn't in the sense that it wasn't I mean, that wasn't. I know that you are crediting people, and
Yeah.
that wasn't exactly that in that point. In that point, it's my a must. It's more. How do you define the kind of art you're doing when you're changing the light upon something? Or I don't know.
I don't.
Excuse my English.
I don't define it. I don't try to. I mean, another reason that I work like I do is because I didn't go to art college. I think it means that I work in a certain way, maybe different from people that would have gone to art college at the same time as me. I've never read theory, I've never had to read it, so I don't question myself as much as maybe someone who went to art college does. I'm not very self-critical in those terms. So I don't think too much about those questions, to be honest. I would say more of an instinctive artist than one that thinks about the next move or the theory behind something. That might not be answering your question, but
yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
And
is there any other questions? We can come back to you, but it's just if there's anyone else that has a question.
Hi, I apologise. I came in late, so I missed part of it. I probably missed the best bit.
Definitely the best bit. You missed.
No, I was just wondering because you mentioned accidents.
Yeah.
And I was quite interested by the car you showed from Iraq. I mean, the fact that it was originally destined for the fourth plinth, and then that was cancelled. I don't know for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, does that mean that the work takes on another life? Has it failed? I mean. You see what I mean? I mean, it seems that accidents, I think even the remake of the film, I'm sure there were lots of things that happened that weren't meant to happen, but that makes probably something...
That's exciting.
Yeah, but I mean the car itself, the fact that it finds itself after what you've first planned to do, it finds itself then in the Imperial War Museum. Yeah. I mean, do you think that it still is credible as an artwork?
It's not. Well, the car itself is not an artwork. The project as a whole is maybe where the art lies, somewhere within the project. It's funny because we made a maquette of a destroyed car to go on the plinth, and it was for this exhibition for the fourth plinth, etc. But it's in there's a section of my exhibition called My Failures, and it's about failed projects, and that is in that section because it was failed at the time. But of course, it did take on this other life, and I'm very glad it didn't go on the plinth. I'm actually glad they didn't accept it and it went across America. It's a much more random, potentially dangerous thing to do, but a lot more exciting, really, because it would have looked more like an artwork on the plinth. It didn't look like an artwork as you're towing it across America, and no one was interested in the artwork or it looks like a John Chamberlain or whatever. It was all about the car, which is what I always wanted it to be about. So sometimes when you do fail at something and you take the idea somewhere else, it actually works a lot better. So I'm glad I didn't get that commission, which I think is probably what you're trying to get at. And also, when with the miners' strike and you have 1,000 people reenacting a riot, you're basically reenacting chaos, which is, it's almost impossibility. So we were very aware of that, and that was something we wanted to do.
Yeah, no, in fact, the reason why I asked about the fourth plinth was, of course, the context is so important.
Yes.
With the monuments that surround it.
Yes, I mean, the fourth plinth is in Trafalgar Square in London, which is in this imperial space, basically, and it's a celebration of the Battle of Trafalgar, which I don't even know if that was against the French or the Spanish. Now when I think about it, but anyway, it's a place of martial victory, British martial victory, and so that's, of course, I wanted it there to deflate everything around it. And also the empire, the British Empire as well, is celebrated in that space. So it would have been nice there, obviously, it would have worked, but it wasn't to be. I can see why they didn't choose it. I wasn't surprised.
Bonjour.
Hello.
I don't know how to ask my question. Yep. Okay. But I was just wondering, when you walk about, like, you show us the people dressing like the women do the clothes for their husband. This kind of.
Who? The wrestler?
No, yeah, the wrestler and the party where there is some people making stupid faces or stuff like that. You know the picture you saw.
Yes, it's not a party. It's a competition.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a sport.
Sorry.
Not an Olympic sport. Yeah.
Yeah, but all these kind of traditional
things. Yeah.
Things. I was not sure of the limits of how do you. Sorry.
Ask in French, and then someone can translate for me.
No, I speak English, but I just.
Okay.
I'm just shy English. It's not a question of making jokes or something like that at all. I know.
No.
But what kind of?
Where am I in the picture?
Yeah, and what are your limits with that? Like,
okay.
Because when you show us pictures of women making clothes for their husband, the competition, I don't know, because I grew up in countryside too, and there is many things like that too in France. But I never know how much we can have.
I understand. Well, I think the first thing, if I may answer, is that competition is entertainment. People go there to watch and to laugh and to scream and shout.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing by taking a photograph is extending the idea of it as entertainment and as something that's funny and incredible. I'm not saying these people. He doesn't look like that all the time. If he did, that might be different. This is something that he does, and he's very proud of it. Because he's the world champion. So it's just an extension of that, and I'm interested in it. So I'm not poking fun at him.
Yeah, no, sure, I know. But for example, this is for me the beginning of like you walk with the reconstitution of the fight in the streets with guards and civil people, that you saw when you were younger, and it touched you and you made a reconstitution.
Right. Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, say in French.
Ouais, non, mais c'est juste, je me demandais, à un moment donné, quand vous filmez, quand vous prenez des photos des individus qui sont dans ces fêtes locales où il y a quelque chose qui est en effet très puissant parce que les gens sont très heureux de participer à cette chose-là. Et évidemment, ça pose des limites Enfin, je me demandais en fait à quel moment il y a un regard aussi critique sur cette chose-là, en fait, parce que même si c'est des fêtes locales et qu'on ne peut pas en faire des blagues, c'est aussi quelque chose qui, pour moi, représente une certaine violence sous-jacente.
Can someone translate that? Just briefly.
She's wondering whether or not you are critical about those folk practices, because she says that under those entertainment thing there is violence and
I'm interested. Yeah. I'm not critical, not really. There's violence. I know there's violence. There's a lot of very violent ones in the UK, very violent, but I'm interested in that. But I'm not critical of it. It's not in my. Why should I be, really? I like them. Basically, I'm saying I'm recording it because I like it. All the things I work with, I'm interested in or I like. I'm not doing it because I don't like it, or I'm trying to be anti it. I'm very pro it, on the simplest level. We can talk afterwards if you want.
Hello.
Hello.
Have you a folk practice?
Do I have
a folk practice?
Do I have a folk practice?
Yeah.
In what respect? What do you mean? Do I dress up and?
Yeah. Or
No, because if you're from London, you see that just doesn't happen really in London. This kind of thing. And I was born in London, so no, I don't do folk dancing or singing. I can't sing, but no, I don't. I'm not a participant. In a lot of ways, I'm not really someone that likes taking part in things. I'm the person on the side looking. That's how I've always been. You know, I don't like sport. I don't play sport. I hate sport. So it's. But I much prefer these things. But I'm not really a participant as such. For example, I find it very difficult going on protests and marches. I find it very difficult for many reasons.
Hello.
Hello.
I wanted to ask about after you made the Battle of Orgreave or the reenactment. You know, you said you were trying to like resurface the sort of the anger and bring the emotions out of the people. I wondered if you've ever revisited the people a while after you made the reenactment to see if there was any tensions resurfaced in the community, because I know you used a lot of people from that you used miners and policemen from the actual community.
Sure. Well, it wasn't many policemen. It's mainly miners, to be honest. There are a few policemen involved.
I've seen an interview with a policeman
he took
in
part
the video.
In the film. Yeah. But it was mainly miners. I go back occasionally. I actually went back a few weeks ago, but no, I don't think I've started like another wave of violence against the police or miners. Well, I didn't want to do that. But no, I didn't. I don't think that's happened.
No.
It's meant to make people feel angry, but not necessarily act angry or take it out on people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of English people, well, at least 2.
Yeah.
You better come to this film tonight.
We're on an exchange here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to show this bit of the film or not. Do you really want to see it? You want to see it? We'll have to find it, but we should do that in a minute. Basically, this film it was commissioned by Mute Records. And it was for a big box set about Depeche Mode. It was a DVD, so we spent a long time going around the world filming their fans. And then when the band saw the film, they said, "No, you can't show this." And we don't know why, but we can show it sometimes, like tonight. We're not allowed to show it, basically. But it's never been seen in France, and we're going to show it tonight at the Salle de Bain. And it's really about how this band has affected people in different ways around the world. In very unexpected ways as well. Shall I try and find this bit?
Существует
Martin Gore is the Queen of Great Britain. Depeche Mode, the King of the world.
I'm going to play it in about 10 seconds.
мое личное мнение по этому поводу, начиналось все это
The volume right up.
в года перестройки.
So this is about them talking about going and gathering with people to talk about the band in the early 90s.
Их вообще не было.
What it meant to them.
И встречаться было негде. Поэтому фанаты, поклонники, они как-то совершенно случайно, как в наиболее центральном месте города, начали собираться здесь, чтобы общаться друг с другом, узнавать друг у друга информацию о группе.
На передаче в мире животных. Long flag. Сюда, пожалуйста, камеру. Пожалуйста, сюда, наверх. Крупным планом, пожалуйста.
Да, достаточное количество людей слушало Депеш Мод в то время. Причем, то есть я могу сказать, что не 100, не 1000, не 5000, не 10 тысяч человек слушали Депеш Мод. Это действительно вся страна слушала Депеш Мод, потому что даже ночью, ложась спать, я слышал, как во дворе у кого-то работает машина, и там по радио слышно Депеш Мод. Или в другой раз я слышу, когда мимо окна проходят люди, которые поют Депеш Мод, даже не зная слов.
Есть люди, или люди, а люди. Кто еще что хочет сказать?
Ну, я хочу сказать то, что в основном, почему меня привлекло Депеш стиль, это в основном-то стиль такой отрешенности от жизни, стиль одиночества, стиль романтики.
Вот они попса.
Для них это технологии, это звуки из жизни. Это, то есть, не музыкальные инструменты, которые там гитара, там все такое прочее. Действительно такое.
Научно-фантастический фильм.
Да, это
стиль.
да. И то, что говорят, это попса, это как-то обидно немножко.
Скажите по-русски, какой еще стиль музыки может быть таким эмоциональным? Вы где-нибудь в каком стиле музыки слышали там звучание вилок, там по рельсам, ножницами, все такое? Такого больше нигде нет, это оригинал вообще.
Давай, изобрази что-нибудь.
Потому что приход именно вот музыки новой волны совпал именно с крахом Советского Союза. Это была музыка свободы, я считаю. То есть именно вот мода, впервые открытая.
So that's like 5 minutes from the film. And something very funny happens after that, but I'm not going to show it to you. So you have to come tonight and see it. I think we're going to go somewhere after this, if you want to join us. Where are we going to? Sounds good. Okay. Thank you.